Hello, this is the first time that I'm trying this. As many of you know, I just put out a book, The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, a visual meditation. I am trying to figure out how to flip it so that you can see, so that you see things the way they're supposed to look, or how to take a screenshot, how to use a screenshot of from my laptop. But I haven't been able to figure that one out yet. So for this first one, um, I'm going to start. I'm going to try. For the first one, I'll have to show you this, the book, and you'll see it backwards. Um, uh, I'm going to talk about the Yoga Sutras, about how they build on each other and how they present a path, much like the hero's path, which I talked about with the Tarot. Only this is a unquestionably really spiritual path, with the goal being to recognize, realize your own true nature. That can mean a lot of different things, as we'll see, but nonetheless, we'll start with the very first sutra, Atta Yoga Nushasanam. Now we begin the practice of yoga, or now we begin the exposition of yoga. Anushasanam means, anu means something, shows something that came before. So when Patanjali starts this, when he says, now we begin the exposition of yoga, by saying anu and then shasanam, which indicates some sort of teaching, he lets you know that this is not something he made up, that this is, he is writing down, he is presenting an exposition of the practice of yoga. In my image, which I'll try to get back to again, I took a little bit of liberty. Usually this is just the beginning. It just sort of states, okay, Patanjali's beginning the book here, and he's telling you this is what the book's going to be about. It's going to be the practice of yoga. But I took a little bit of liberty with it, and I showed a glass of spilled milk. Because now that the milk is spilled, now that the mess is made, now that we said or did whatever it is we wish we hadn't said or done, now that things are not the way we want them to be, now is when we begin the practice of yoga. Of course, now is the only time that we can ever do anything, beginning the practice of yoga or otherwise. But in so many instances, the spiritual path is really often predicated on the need to bring ourselves up out of a difficult place. As sometimes they say that there's no atheists in the trenches, or that really it's only when you're down that you look for some sort of meaning or some sort of guidance or God. But in any event, that's the first one. Now we begin the exposition of yoga. So I'll go through the first few right now. So Patanjali says that's what we're going to do. Now I'm going to tell you about yoga. So then the next obvious question is, what is yoga? And here we go. The very famous one, Yogas Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Yoga is the stilling or the controlling or the cessation of the movements of the mind. The chitta, which is the mind, vrittis, which is movements. So the chitta vrittis are those pictures, the endless kind of stream of information, of knowledge, of images, of stories, of you name it, anything. It's the mind. The chitta vrittis are the mind, the movements of the mind, the way the mind is always moving, always darting about here and there, finding a belief, finding something that it, thinks you should do, a plan, a regret, a dream, a fantasy. These are the chitta vrittis. There's not necessarily anything wrong with them. That is the nature of the mind, to move like that. But they serve as something of a smokescreen. We end up they hide our own true nature. We, as the next one will say, we identify with these movements, and in any event, what yoga is the ability to still these movements, not to force them into some kind of like, uncomfortable stasis, but the ease of mastery with these movements of the mind. Why would we want to do that? Well, the next sutra, the third sutra, and I will show you that. Tada drastu svarupe vastanam. It tells you why you would do it, because then, when the mind is so stilled, the seer, drastu, can stand in his own true nature, can fully occupy their own true nature, his or her own true nature. They not just see it, they not just stand in it, but they completely occupy it. They are it. That the movements of the mind prevent us from occupying our the essence of who we are. So when we practice yoga, we then have the ability to stand in our own true nature, because then the fourth one, vritti sarupyam ittaratra. At all other times, we identify with the movements of the mind. And this is what I said. When the mind isn't stilled, much like the clouds obscuring the sun, we see the clouds and not the sun. We identify, we think that we are, the person who is a mother or a father, or who wishes they were a mother or a father, who was married but isn't, who ate too much, who should lose some weight, who looks really great or looks really awful or said something really smart. All of these movements, all of these stories, all of these images, this is who we think we are. Those are all movements of the mind telling us about ourselves. And only when those movements are stilled can we see our true nature, which is above and beyond any of that. Because otherwise we're so busy identifying with them. So, movements of the mind, we know kind of generally what they are. What are they? What more could we know about them, or do we need to know about them? There are 5 types of movements of the mind, and you can see there are 2 hands there. I think you can see. This is vrittaya, panchataya, klishta. There are 5 types of movements of the mind, and each of these 5 types can be, on the one hand, painful, or the same of the 5 types could be not painful. Then, of course, the next obvious question is, what are those 5 types of movements of the mind? And here, this is the last one that I'll do today. Here we go. Here they are listed. Pramana, viparyaya, vikalpa, nidra, smritaya. This simply lists those 5 types of the movements of the mind. It's like our birthday cake. As I say in the book, they used to think that at 5 the mind was completely, the brain was completely formed. But of course, we no longer think that that's true. But still, there are many things that by the time of 5 we do have developed that we didn't have developed before. We are able to recognize time, whereas at earlier ages we don't really have a clear sense of time. Usually we're beginning to learn to read, we can count. Our mind is developing the structure that will make it possible to function as a human being in the world. Our communication skills, our ability, again, to read, to function, to recognize the way in which we need to think in order, as I said, to function. Often we start school at 5 years old. So it's our present, our 50-year-old birthday cake, these 5 movements of the mind. They might seem like they're bad things, but they're not. The mind is a good thing, and these 5 movements are gifts, not curses. They're part of our human nature. So what are they? Pramana is right knowledge. Viparyaya is wrong knowledge. Vikalpa is imagination or fantasy. Nidra is sleep. And smrita is memory. You could argue that you could debate whether these are really the 5 types of movements of the mind, and a case could be made for perhaps a different 5 type. But it's interesting to go through a day and see how that works, to watch your thoughts and see if they do fit into one of these categories. Of course, right knowledge and wrong knowledge are kind of always shifting, and fantasy too, or imagination. But it's interesting to watch this and see, it actually works pretty well, you'll find out. And it's also interesting to watch whether you are having painful right knowledge or not painful right knowledge, or painful wrong knowledge or not painful wrong knowledge. There are, it's a very, very useful, very, very useful exercise. All right, this is book 1. Next time I will go into more detail with what each of these types of knowledge are. All right, talk to you soon. Bye.